Settle for details now. An economist and professor of finance at the University of Ghana, Godfred Bokman, is calling for a raft of governance reforms with the aim of achieving a sustainable public financing regime. His comments come on the back of the U-turn by government to include individual bonds in the debt restructuring program. He's urging the government to rethink their decision. Professor Bokman, who describes the move as unfair, said government must take advantage of the economic crisis to correct the systemic problems that continue to adversely run the finances of the country into a ditch. He's advocating, among other things, a reduction in the size of government and the suspension of ex gratia.
If our president cannot govern with less than 40 ministers and the other reforms, he should resign and give Ghana a chance. Because it's too expensive governing this country. With a number of ministers and associated costs, state-owned enterprises, new agencies being created, some of them are actually not doing anything, but their lifestyles are loaded on the public purse. We must suspend ex gratia for until 2040. Look, this is a good crisis. That is how I see it. We must initiate certain governance reforms, productivity-enhanced reforms that allows us to guarantee sustainable public finance. Until that is restored, no ex gratia across different regimes, across different political parties. And we must have that conversation and broaden that and a certain level of wage freeze that allows this country to have fresh start. We must do that. We cannot try to resolve this problem by disproportionately loading it on creditors who through no fault of theirs were only doing the right thing by investing in a safe instrument, i.e. government bond, and now they have to pay this price. That is sad. That is unfortunate.
We've been speaking to some of you about their suggested reforms, especially the suspension of ex gratia, and here's what she told us.
My point of view for the ex gratia being given to the MPs, if it can be minimized or reduced to help the country, because at the moment the country is in a hardship and we need a lot of money to run many things in the country. So at the moment, the number of MPs that we have in the country, the ministers that we have in the country, if we can reduce it to save some money for the country to help. At the moment, the institutions that we have, the institution that we have in the, how do we call it, the ministries. Yes, if the number of ministries can be, because the ministers we are having now are more than the ministries that we are managing. So at least the number of ministries that we should have the same ministers, not more than that. That would be the best.
They have to cut down the number of ministers, like let's say half or 1/3. Then they have to also reduce the amount of the extra share. Like that one can half, that one to half. It's too much because actually they are not the one doing the job too, but even the civil servants who are doing the job, they are even anonymous. So they have to reduce the amount. That's what I think.
Well, I think we should cut down the ministers? Yeah, then we should manage how we spend as citizens. Yeah, I think that one will help us. Yeah, it's not about politics, but it's about ourselves. Understand? Yeah. So I think 40 will be okay. Yeah, 40 will be okay. Not we should stop paying per se, but we can minimize. I mean, we can reduce the amount. Understand? Yeah, we can reduce the amount.
Looking at the number of ministers or cabinet they have, if they should cut it, Ghana can make a lot of millions from that, and that could help save the economic hardships. But if they don't do that, the poor people will suffer. Some of the allowances and some of the household amenities that we pay for the ministers to enjoy, some of them even pick their children from school with the fuel that is supplied by government. All of those things should be cut down. If they give them ex gratia, well, you've served and they want to give you 1 or 2 compensation, that one I think is normal. But those kind of benefit they get, somebody can just pick the child right from school and all with the fuel that is supplied by government. And that is what I think that shouldn't be done.
Now, several people are reportedly injured after 2 vehicles crashed on the Bumburugu Road in the northeast region. Eyewitnesses say the vehicles crashed after one attempted an overtaking on the Poor Road. It crashed into the other and somersaulted multiple times and landed over a gutter near the Bumburugu Senior High School. Correspondent Ilyasu Tanko joins me with more. Ilyasu, can you first report the state of the road?
Well, the state of the road is really in a very deplorable condition, very deplorable condition. We know that the government attempted to construct this particular road, but as we speak, the contractor, we understand, have vacated site, and it has been a major concern for the residents here in the Bumburugu district. The road itself is almost unmotorable. Part of it is very difficult to access. As you can see, many people are finding it difficult to travel, especially in this Christmas period. Many people have decided not to come home for the festival. At least I spoke to some people who were traveling from the Naliruko to this particular area, and they raised concern about the nature of the road. So I can tell you that indeed the nature of the road is really very terrible.
Ilyasu, on the accident, where have the passengers been taken to?
Well, we understand that some of the passengers are currently being taken. Some of them are currently taken to hospitals in Tamale, Bumburugu, and Panduri. We know that some of them are also very seriously injured. And as we speak, we don't have any report of any death. At least the officials are saying that nobody have passed on in this particular accident. But a lot of them are currently injured and being treated in these hospitals that I've mentioned.
And you've also been speaking to the paramount chief of the area. What has he been saying?
Well, the paramount chief have been raising concern about the deplorable nature of the road. He's earnestly begging the government, especially the president himself, to allow the contractor to come back on site and ensure that the road is completed. And he's also making an appeal for residents here who can help to come in. He mentioned that he had to organize communal labor to go and fix the road because of its deplorable nature. And so he's asking that the government allows or makes sure that the contractor is back on site to ensure that the road is constructed.
Before I let you go, there's been a rising number of accidents on that specific road. What do the residents think is the cause?
Well, the residents think it's as a result of the poor nature of the road. This road has been in this particular nature for a very long time. I can tell I have been in Bumburugu for the past 2 days now, and it has been the major concern for the residents here. I can tell the only concern, so to speak, of the residents here, they want the government to ensure that this particular road is constructed. It has been their headache for a very long time now. And as you know, the Bumburugu area, there have been a lot of intermittent clashes, but for the past 6 years now, the area has been peaceful. And so the residents think that this is the time for the government to give them development. And one of the things that they want the government to really do for them is to ensure that they construct this road that is leading from the district capital to the regional capital, Naliru.
That is Northeast correspondent Ilyasu Tanko giving us an update of that accident. Away from that, Goldman Sachs slashed its oil price forecast for 2023, saying it sees a market surplus early next year. Now, the Wall Street Bank cut its Brent oil forecast for the first and second quarter of 2023 to $90 and $95 US barrel from $115 and $105 US per barrel respectively. Now, how will this prediction affect Ghana? Chamber of Petroleum Consumers has been monitoring the international market, and Executive Director Duncan Amwa joins us live with more. Good morning, Mr. Amwa. Thank you so much for your time. Now, with many predictions forecasting a fall in crude oil prices on the global market, how will this affect Ghana considering our forecast situation?
Well, thank you. Good morning, Merry Christmas to your viewers and your good self. Indeed, oil prices continue to remain volatile, while JP Morgan forecast to see about 110 in 2023. Goldman and others are looking at the $95 per barrel region. Meanwhile, the OPEC bloc is also forecasting that in 2023 you are likely to see a surge in demand. And what demand numbers increase and would mean to pricing would simply be to see prices go up a bit. So it's quite a mixed bag as of today. But if you are a Ghanaian, the most immediate announcement that we can put exclusively here is that it's likely you are going to pay a bit less for fuel the first week of January, which is the first window for pricing in Ghana. What we see with international market price development, and then again, the forex, the city's relatively stable to good performance, it's quite certain that you are going to see averages for petrol around 10.6, while diesel is likely to trade averaging around 13 Ghana cedi per liter in the first week of January. And this probably would be because of international market price movement, which, like I indicated, are seeing crude dropped to about $84 per barrel region as we speak, while the price for finished product, if you go to the platform, have also seen some sharp declines. If you put them together, it's likely going to be about 10 to 12% further cut in the current pump price levels for most Ghanaians, and that for us is a good news. 2023 forecast it's quite mixed, but the good thing is that if you are in Ghana now, just like your counterparts in the United States, where their Energy International Administration, they are going to likely see their pump prices also decline from the $3.91 a liter, a gallon, to about 3.5, and that for them is good. And I'm certain that for Ghanaians as well, the most immediate impact that we are likely to have will be to see pump prices decline further within the next few days, like I indicated.
Thank you very much. That is Duncan Amwa, who's the Executive Director of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers. So it looks like 2023 might be a good year at the fuel pumps. Let's do other stories now, because government is threatening to withhold feeding grants and teacher trainee allowances to colleges of education across the country if they admit students beyond the quota set for them. Now, the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, in a letter addressed to principals of colleges of education, directed the schools to admit a defined number of students for the 2022-2023 academic year. Kweku Asante joins me on phone with details of this directive. Kweku joins me on Zoom. Kweku, first, what is the content of this letter?
So this letter, like you said, signed by Professor Ahmed Dinapo, the Deputy Director General for the Ghana Tertiary Education Committee, says that please be informed that there are permissible admission figures for entry into level 100 at the colleges of education in the 2022-2023 academic year. Please be informed that the allocation cannot be varied and must strictly be adhered to. For the avoidance of doubt, payment of feeding grants and training allowances will be guided by these numbers. And so they attach a list to it. So essentially what the GTEC is saying now is that colleges of education around the country will have a defined number of students they can admit for the next academic year, failing which their feeding grants and the trainee allowances will not be paid.
Attached to the letter are the various colleges and the number of students they are required to admit. Can you run us through a number of them?
So there are about 32 of these schools that are attached to this letter. Let me do a number of them. Abetifi Presbyterian College of Education, for instance, are permitted to only admit 300 students in the next academic year. The Accra College of Education are also permitted to admit 295 students. At that college, 250. Agogo Presbyterian Women's College of Education, 291. Akachi College, 288. Akrokere College of Education, 320. If you go through the list, there is no school that is allowed to admit 400 students. The list hovers around 280, 300, 320, and a number of them are a little bit happy to be able to admit 350 students. So that is going to be the state of play when schools resume next year. For the College of Education, they are now permitted to admit a number of students that is not exceeding what the GTEC has allocated them.
A reaction has been coming in from the Teacher Trainees Association. What are they saying?
So I've been speaking with the College of Education, the Teacher Trainees President, Jonathan Junu, who tells me that they are happy with the arrangements that have been put out. They are hopeful that it will fix the accommodation crisis on campus. They make the case that there are classes that are filled up with numbers. The infrastructure is not enough on campus. And that this directive from GTEC will make it sure that College of Education only admits students that they can take care of in terms of the infrastructure on campus. So they are backing this decision from government.
My colleague Kwekwe Santi giving us details of that statement. Also joining us on Zoom is Kofi Asare, who is Executive Director, Africa Education Watch. Mr. Asare, good morning. Thank you so much for your time. Now, what do you make of this directive? Mr. Asare, if you can please unmute yourself for me.
Yeah, good morning and good morning to your audience. I think this was expected. It wasn't possible for government to sustain the payment of teacher trainee allowances. As it wasn't possible in the past, so shall it be today and in the future. We indicated to government that spending 240 million in feeding adult learners who are tertiary students was wasteful expenditure. The government went ahead, and then now we are seeing government struggling to finance the payment of the allowance. As we speak, by the time the finance minister went to budget, to parliament, the teacher trainee allowance was in arrears of 4 months, which means that only one semester's allocation had been disbursed. So if government on one breath claims that without the allowance, teachers cannot go to school because they are so poor, when we ask ourselves, so why have they been in school up to December when the allowance is actually in arrears? So this is not a sustainable policy. In 2014, we saw the same thing happening. Between 2006 and 2014, there were quotas in all these schools, restricting intake simply because government couldn't afford paying a certain quantum of money as teacher trainee allowance. So this quota has been there for about 15 years. And then we advocated the removal of the quota because it restricted access to College of Education. And then it was removed in 2015. Which increased enrollment by 60% in 2016. Unfortunately, we've had it being reintroduced today because of the same reasons why it was taken off in 2014, 2015, which is the lack of funds. So it is expected. Let me indicate that the statement that the Teacher Trainee Association has released is just a political response, to a serious educational issue. I don't think they want Ghanaians to believe that the quota was imposed because colleges of education were choked. I mean, it's very, very laughable to assume that one would expect Ghanaians to believe that the quotas have been imposed because the schools are choked. That is not the reason. Government has never admitted that any college of education is choked. And I believe that the principals of the colleges, in their wisdom, will never admit students when the schools are choked. So that is not the case. The case is that the cutoffs have been imposed because government can only pay a certain amount of money as trainee allowance. And that is part of what we are going through under the IMF program. The net hiring freeze policy that has been imposed in the public sector is not only a freeze on employment, but it also requires that you cut on your compensation budget line. And the teacher trainee allowance is a major compensation budget line in the education sector. So it is not surprising that government is unable to increase that amount, and for that matter has to reduce intake by 30% into colleges of education for 2013.
So, Mr. Asari, what's the best way forward?
The best way forward is for government to channel the 240 million Ghana cedis a year, which has proven inadequate to finance the allowance and feeding scheme, into the student loan scheme. Government has introduced a guarantee-free student loan scheme, which requires that once one holds a national ID, they can qualify to benefit from student loan. So, but the student loan trust fund is underfunded. This year, government allocated only 3 million in the budget. We know there may be other sources coming on later. But the fact is that it is underfunded. That is why student loan keeps delaying. So what government should do is that government should move the 240 million it is spending annually on the teacher training allowance and add it to the student loan kitty, so that there will be enough funds to provide student loans to all tertiary students, including college of education students. That is the sustainable way to address this issue. For now, what we are doing is pure politics. It will not help anyone in the long term.
Now, some say it has nothing to do with government's ability or inability to pay trainee allowances. What are your thoughts on that?
It has everything. It has everything to do with politics. Everything about this is politics. As I'm saying, this policy is not new. It was there for about 15, 16, 17 years. And it took a lot of civil society campaign to get the government in 2014 or so to jettison it. Let me indicate that in 2014, the then government actually jettisoned it, not because of
All right, it seems like we have lost Mr. Kofi Asari, and he's the Executive Director of the Africa Education Watch. Mr. Asari, we lost you for a bit. If you can just go back to your earlier points. Mr. Asari, if you can hear me. Okay, cool. Yeah, we lost you a bit, so can you just repeat what you were saying?
What I'm saying is that in 2014, it wasn't the then government's intention to abandon the policy. Okay, so there's always some around this policy. But then, you know, it was an IMF conditional policy. Unfortunately, we've waited for another IMF conditionality to compel us to begin cutting down on how much we are spending on that policy. It is sad that policymakers will always wait for external actors to come and instruct them to reduce your compensation budget line before appreciating spending efficiency and cost expenditure rationalization. I would expect that in a year when Ghana has received the lowest share of the budget education allocation, which is only 12.9% of the budget being allocated to education, the first time in about 20 years, I would have expected that such a decline, such a minimal allocation of public resources to education should have been accompanied by a holistic attempt to reduce waste, you know, with the little that we have. And that should have started with the deletion or the scrapping of the teacher training allowance budget line. Unfortunately, because it is politically expedient, it didn't happen. I hope that as we move into next year, government itself will continue to realize that keeping such wasteful expenses on its books will only come and hurt the education sector.
Thank you so much for your time. Kofi Asari is Executive Director of Africa Education Watch. This is News Desk with me, Mapitso Sebidi. Stay tuned in. Thank you for staying with us. Now, my colleague Kwekwe Asante has been speaking to Member of Parliament for Tamale North, Al-Hassan Suhini. Let's listen.
Presentation. Today we are joined by MP for Tamale North, Honorable Al-Hassan Suhini. He used to do what I'm doing now, but he's in his second term as Member of Parliament for the good people of Tamale North. We'll discuss the budget. The censure motion fiasco, it didn't just get the kind of results they wanted to get. And also, the just ended NDC Congress, at which some party stalwarts have been elected as executives. There are those who are concerned that given the rancor that characterized the debate, the NDC may struggle to put its house in order to be able to have a fighting chance for 2024. Honorable Suhini, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to be here. I hope you are well.
I'm doing very well.
Nice.
Honorable, I'll start with the just ended NDC Congress. What are your views about the kind of persons who have been elected by the delegates?
I must say that I am excited by the outcome of the Congress. The lead up to the Congress itself was quite dramatic in some sense. It's kind of revived the spirit of the party in a way I have not seen in a very long time, and that for me was very good for the party. There were those who thought that this contest shouldn't have come on, especially because of the kind of united front that the party intends to go into the next election with. So those were motivated, those thoughts were motivated or inspired by fears that a contest will necessarily lead to acrimony, which may be difficult to patch up after the Congress to be ready for the general election. So you had people who thought that the contest wasn't necessary, and you had those who thought that it was necessary to, if for nothing at all, rekindle the spirit of the party and to shake things up and to ensure that we put our best foot forward as we march into the election 2024. At the end of the day, I think that both views were relevant. The outcome, however, has shown that the party is in readiness for the general elections ahead of us. I say so because, one, the party has been rekindled, the spirit of the party has been rekindled from the branch to the national level. And it's reflected in the, margins that you even saw. So you do not have middle grounds, so to speak. It is when you have middle grounds and when you have close results that are so close, that are split, that unity becomes difficult to achieve, because then positions tend to be entrenched. But when the outcome of the election is as emphatic as it showed in either the general secretary contest or the chairmanship contest, anybody who is politically minded will understand that his results or her results couldn't have been as a result of any unfair dealings, yes, or machinations. It's a popular view of the party, and if you are political in nature, you'll understand that you win sometimes, you lose sometimes, you lead sometimes, you follow sometimes.
But still, people like Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo have genuine reasons to be concerned that they feel this contest was maybe unfairly tilted. In the lead up, there were some leading members from the caucus in Parliament who threw their weight behind General Mosquito. Indeed, there were those who said that the former president tried to impress on the general secretary not to contest. There were some also viewpoints that Ofosu-Ampofo was viewed as quote-unquote anti-Mahama. I don't know what that necessarily means within the party. And so the system was turned sort of against him. He released a statement after this Congress saying that there were certain things that happened that would make it a bit difficult for everybody to come back together, but he is willing to rededicate himself for the party. Without people like Ofosu-Ampofo, how is the party going to go forward in terms of leadership? And has the party already initiated mechanisms to get people like Vosuampofo back in the party's fold?
Well, I will not say that everything was rosy in the lead up to the elections. Some of the campaign messages were unsavory. Some of them were unfortunate. But that is the nature of competition. Sometimes it gets so tense that people lose their cool and say things that ordinarily wouldn't have been, said. And so I think that we should all learn lessons from some of the things that were said that we all find unpleasant, and moving forward, be more guided when we engage in subsequent competitions, especially when the contest is an internal one. Having said this, it is important for us to also understand that in any contest of any sort, you will find three ingredients. There will be truths, there will be untruths, and there will be exaggerations. So at the end of the day, it is up to the delegates and those campaigning to pray that people are discerning enough to decipher the truth from the untruths, and to choose the truths from the exaggerations. And so I'm not in a position to vouch for some of the things that were said about candidate A or candidate B. What I will just say is that at the end of the day, the delegates of our party have given us the direction that they want the leadership of the party to take the party to. And I pray that the grace of God will guide those who have been chosen, not to disappoint those who chose them, and also not to disappoint, the people of Ghana who are counting on the NDC to put this house in order to rescue this nation and build the Ghana that we all, deserve and want. And as for members of parliament declaring support, I know that it happened for both candidates. Both candidates, especially for the chairmanship race, had some members of parliament openly declaring support for them. So it doesn't make it tilted, in favor of one against the other. On our platform, sometimes members of parliament platform, sometimes supporters of the two candidates went at each other, a couple of times, selling and marketing their candidates. So it's not. It cannot be an example of how the race was tilted, because you had some members of parliament. They are right. They have the right to do so. You also had some leading members of the party who declared support for General Mosquito, and some of them declared support for Vosuampofo. At the end of the day, the delegates, who are the true owners of the party, the masses, have also accepted, the choice of the delegates. And for me, knowing the Vosuampofo that contested this election, knowing that Vosuampofo, who has, dedicated almost half of his life, adult life, full adult life, I'll say, but half of his life to the service of this NDC, he is not one to put impediments in the way of the party, especially when it is preparing for an election that is as crucial as this one is. I believe he's a bridge builder, and I know that he is going to be available, contributing, significantly to building bridges and to shaping the fight that the NDC will be taking to the NPP, all in efforts at rescuing Ghana and building the Ghana we want.
I mean, talking about 2024, already there are people who are doing a match-up between your executives and that of the NPP. They take chairman in team, then they take General Mosquito. They take Fifi Kwete, then they take Justin Frimpong Kodia. Do you believe these are the men that are going to be able to sufficiently match up your colleagues in the NPP and be able to wrestle power in 2024?
Well, to paraphrase from Dr. Baumia, that comparison is a match between a boot and a chalawiti. Because, I mean, the weight of General Mosquito is such that you cannot compare.
The team is very experienced. He contested 5 times and then he won.
Yeah, I mean, within the New Patriotic Party, it took him 5 attempts to even win one election within the New Patriotic Party. Not even, you know, within the country. You're talking about General Mosquito, who is a 3-time member of parliament, decided willingly not to contest again. You are talking about General Mosquito, who has served the NDC as its general secretary for 17 years, and each time after 4 years went for contest and won massively. You're talking about General Mosquito, who recently has just done what many thought was going to be difficult in grand style, you know, with ease. And so clearly, if you put General Mosquito and Stephen and Tim at the Makola market, you know where the numbers will go to. I don't have to tell you. So that is a mismatch. If you look at Fifi Kwete, clearly, in comparison to, you know, JFK, he's a novice. I mean, to put it, you know, mildly, and with all due respect, he's a novice compared to Fifi Kwete. So it's a complete mismatch to do that comparison. But what I can assure you is that the caliber of people that the party has chosen for the 2024 general elections are the people that the party needs at this time. It doesn't mean that those who didn't win are not good or they haven't contributed significantly to the cause of the party over the years. It just means that this season and this time requires a certain kind of leadership. And the people who emerge, you know, package themselves to fit the bill. And that is why they were attracted, you know, they were attractive to the delegates, and that's why the delegates chose them. And I believe that they have what it takes not to disappoint the delegates. It's just as it is said, cometh a time, you know, cometh a man. It is the season, and it is what the party needs that influence the choice that they made at the Congress. It was not, in my view, a choice between who is better than the other. It was a choice between who fits this moment now and who doesn't.
Who doesn't. So finally on the Congress, there are those who have said that it was also a prop for former President John Mahama. His campaign songs were being played all over. I was there. And he was on the main podium. He spoke twice. He spoke during the beginning of the Congress. He spoke at the end of it. Governor Dufo was also there. He was sitting at the VIP. He wasn't made to speak. He was introduced once. And those who have said that this was just one way also to just raise former President Mahama against other possible contenders, maybe lacing their boots to contest him for the flag bearership position.
Well, the grace of God works in so many ways. And unfortunately, people who refuse to accept the grace of God sometimes die in anguish. And I think that it is about time that some people within the NDC appreciate the fact that President Mahama is blessed with the grace of God. You may even say he doesn't deserve it because of how you feel about him. But who determines who gets favor from our Maker? You just have to accept it. Look, he is a former president, the only surviving former president of the National Democratic Congress stock. You cannot compare him to Dr. Kobna Dufo. Regardless,
yes, former governor of the Bank of
course, that is not former president. That is not. That's why I'm saying, regardless of Dr. Kobna Dufour's contributions to the NDC in the past and now, regardless to his contributions in government, you can simply not compare him to one who served as president and vice president of the party. And so when the party gather, you cannot, for the life of me, expect that they are given the same protocols. He is a former president. He is a former vice president.
But also someone who is seeking to run for the presidency again.
It does not diminish the protocols. The fact that he's seeking to run for office again does not diminish the protocols that are to be extended to a former president and a vice president. Does it? It doesn't. And so people have to accept that he has become the natural leader, even though we have a constitutional leader of the party. He has become the natural leader of the party in the absence of its founder, Jerry John Rawlings. You fight against it, and it is like kicking your foot, bare foot, against a stone. He has become a natural leader. Yes, the Constitution says the chairman of the party is the leader before the choice of a flag bearer. But, like I said, divine circumstances throw up leaders. And by divine, the founder of the party, who could have been or has served for a long time as a natural leader, is no more. And the only surviving former president we have from our stock is President Mahama. Remember, during the days of Professor Atta Mills after the 2000 elections, every time the NDC gathered, songs of Jerry Rawlings were loud. It gave way eventually to songs of Professor Mills. Even in the 2012 general elections, before the Idebi Keke song came out to upstage other songs of Professor Mills, songs of Professor Mills, you know, reigned. Even at platforms that former President John Mahama was campaigning to be elected as president. When we went to Kumasi as a party to endorse His Excellency John Mahama as our flag bearer for the 2012 general elections after the unfortunate demise of Professor Mills, at that Congress, whose songs were played? Did it mean that we were seeking to bring back Professor Mills from the grave? No. So circumstances just throw up leaders. And if you do not accept it, it is just going to, you know, serve as poison to you. So I don't think that it is deliberately staged, even if it is not, you know, deliberately staged. President Mahama has no match as far as the grassroots of the party is concerned today. So that is why some of us,
he's the one. For
that's why, that is why, and you see, it is not about former President Mahama. It is about the NDC and it's about Ghana. Left to him alone, I'm not in his shoes, but left to him alone, I believe that he would have opted for a comfortable retirement because he has all his, you know, protocols and entitlements intact. Still, if he wants to live as a president of this country, he's going to do so comfortably. So if you find a man like that, still spending sleepless nights, traveling across the country, you know, supporting the NDC in the way that he has been doing, it should tell you that such a man is not a selfish person. Because a selfish person would have, you know, retired and just sat back and enjoyed the comfort of the office. But he's doing this because he sees that there's still a lot of work to be done, and he accepts and understands the fact that, you know, people perhaps may have misconstrued his good intentions in office and misunderstood the vision with which he governed. And he thinks they deserve another opportunity to pronounce on his vision and to give him an opportunity to complete the unfinished task, you know, that he was given the first time. And so the masses of our party recognize this, and that is why they naturally gravitate towards him. And it is not as if some people have sat somewhere to deliberately tilt the scales in favor of President Mahama. He has simply naturally emerged as the natural leader of the NDC as it stands now.
I take your point in that, and you made a post on Facebook, which you suggest that, of course, if after his tenure another leader will emerge, just like you've taken us through. At one point it was Jerry John Rawlings, became Atta Mills, and then him. So that is that. Let's come back to Parliament. The budget is just about getting approved in terms of its totality. The appropriation is set for tomorrow. You haven't taken any of the financial bills so far. The VAT and the e-levy amendment have all not come up. Your side have said that you are going to oppose them, but your side to have had cause to say that government should do this, government should build roads, government should build schools. There are significant concerns. For instance, at the moment, government is struggling to pay its debt. It just announced that it's suspending interest payment on external debts. These are some of the taxes government needs, so crucial to be able to pay these debts, to be able to meet these obligations. Are you not just putting stumbling blocks in the way of government, just as to frustrate them and make your path to returning to office in 2024 easy?
First of all, this government over the years has proven to be the most reckless government that we have ever witnessed in the Fourth Republic. Reckless in every sphere of life, and especially in management of our finances. This government is on record to have borrowed more than any other government in history, taking our debt from a little over 100 billion to almost 500 billion today. Within record time, 6 years, they have been to the capital markets to borrow more than any government has done. And this government is the government in the Fourth Republic, in the history of the Fourth Republic, that has inherited tremendous assets. Assets such as the 2 oil wells, Sankofa and 10, that increased Ghana's revenue, generation sources from 1 that was Jubilee to 3. They also inherited expanded ports. They inherited the international airport expanded, where they had the opportunity to get more revenue. They inherited the sinking fund, money, just liquid money, just put aside for rainy days. They inherited, infrastructure that works to pay for itself, like the Atuabo gas and others. So they came into office not only with the goodwill that the people gave them, but also with some good foundation being laid. They also went ahead to use some of the things they inherited to borrow, like ESLA.
You
collateralize it, get fund.
But it was also because they're doing big things. They're doing free SHS. That was draining on government resources.
That is the recklessness with which I speak of.
Free SHS is reckless.
Nobody has ever, and in the campaigns of the 2016, no one ever said that free SHS was not important. But just as we manage our life according to our, capacity, it was important that if it had to be done, it be done well. And if you do it recklessly like they did, then it becomes an excuse for your failure. Because you did not plan and you just decided to do it recklessly, and it has resulted in failures even with that policy and other sectors. It is embarrassing to show it up as the reason for your failure. Why didn't you plan? And that is why the NDC thought that the most rational way to have dealt with the introduction of free SHS was to do it progressively. So that you examine your capacity every step of the way and roll out more freebies as you go on.
They said that the Ghanaian student could not wait. There are people who were falling out after basic school and they were not being able to progress. We cannot ask them to wait until government has the means. And so if you can use all the revenues you have to be able to finance the education of your children, then that is building your future. That is some sound argument. And so far, 6 years, they've been able to do it for at least for the last 5 years. Although the amount of money that have gone into it, colossal amounts of money, but they say they are banking on the hope, on the future of this country.
First of all, it is not true that colossal sums of money have gone into it. We tolerate that argument because we don't want the numbers to confuse people. But the fact remains, like I've told you, that this government has taken our debt from about 125 billion to 400, almost 500 billion.
450 billion.
450 billion thereabout. how much of that billions have gone into free SHS? Sometimes in a year, they spend less than, according to the budget, 2 billion on free SHS. 2. And we are talking about hundreds of billions. So when they tell you that the problems are as a result of free SHS, and even though they have borrowed this much and they have gotten that much from the oil, free SHS is the problem, it's a lie. Because the amount of money that goes to free SHS is less than 1%. So it's a lie. But even if you take that for argument's sake, how true is it that free SHS has come to solve the problem of illiteracy and people not having the opportunity to benefit from the education that they are provided? How true is that assertion? Today, Send Ghana and other NGOs are all complaining about the neglect that the basic level education is faced with today.
Yeah.
What is the use of having secondary education without a proper foundation and without a proper roofing? Because investments to basic education, such as KG to primary and JHS, have dwindled over the years, leading to, massive decay of standards at that level. That is the foundation. Tertiary is worse. Get Fund is strangulated because of the debts. It's choked and is unable to expand infrastructure in our various schools. So the schools are already congested, awaiting the graduates from the free SHS program. And no corresponding investments are put in there to take care of it. Lecturers are on strike because conditions of service are that bad. So you are deceiving the people that you are spending all the money at the secondary level, when the truth is that you are spending less than 2% of the money available to you at that level. And yet, even that 2% that you spend there is not guaranteeing anybody any better impact as far as the expectations we have of education is concerned.
So your side will not consider this VAT and e-levy revision because the finance minister has said that one of the reasons why we are here is because your side frustrated the passage of the e-levy. They said that they were not going to go to the IMF with the e-levy. Yeah. But it took almost 4 months. E-levy was finally approved in March. And then it led to the public having a certain perception about that tax measure. Then ultimately it's almost failing because it's not generating the kind of revenue government expected. And it dampened the investor confidence in the government's ability to raise revenue.
Yeah, so I was making the point about how this government has been very reckless in every sphere of life, especially when it comes to managing our finances. And that was just to drive home the point that their problem is not with increased revenue.
Parliamentary Affairs correspondent Kweku Asante in an interview there with Al-Hassan Suhaini. And that's how we end Joy News Desk. With me, Mapitso Sebidi. A year ago, we lost our beloved Elvis Kwashi, the real boss, and we continue to celebrate him. May he rest in peace.